Have you led an audit of any organization? Yes or no? I don't want a long answer. Yes or no? Have you led an audit of any organization of which you were in charge?
Senator, in both of the organizations I ran, we were always completely fiscally responsible.
Yes or no, did you lead an audit?
And the way
yes
my
or
leadership
no,
has
did you lead
been
an audit?
stated
Yes or
has
no?
been completely
What are you afraid of? You
mischaracterized.
can't answer this question. Yes or no, did you lead an audit? Do you not know this answer?
Senator, every
Yes or
part
no?
of my leadership
Yes
of these
or no?
organizations
Yes
has
or
been
no, did you lead an audit?
misrepresented
I will
from
take
top
that as
to
a no.
bottom.
What were the findings? So there were no findings because you've never led an audit.
Senator Tammy Duckworth handed Pete Hegseth one of the most brutal reality checks we've ever seen in a Senate confirmation hearing. In just a few minutes, she exposed him as unprepared, unqualified, and way over his head for the role of Secretary of Defense. This wasn't just a stumble, it was a total unraveling. And the way Duckworth dismantled him point by point is something you need to see to believe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Duckworth, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And also, Secretary Mattis had to have this waiver as well. Mr. Hegseth, this hearing is about whether you are qualified to be Secretary of Defense. And one of the qualifications, to answer my colleague's question, is to actually win the votes of every member of this committee and to be confirmed by the United States Senate. And you need to convince us that you're worthy of that vote, because the people of the state of Illinois voted for me to be their senator so that I could cast that vote when it comes to picking who is going to be the next Secretary of Defense. This hearing now seems to be a hearing about whether or not women are qualified to serve in combat, and not about whether or not you are qualified to be Secretary of Defense. And let me just say that the American people need a SecDef who's ready to lead on day one. You are not that person. Our adversaries watch closely during times of transition, and any sense that the Department of Defense that keeps us safe is being steered by someone who's wholly unprepared for the job puts America at risk, and I am not willing to do that. With that in mind, Mr. Hegseth, I want you to try to explain to the American people, this committee, who have to vote for you, and to our troops who are deployed around the world, why you are qualified to lead the Department of Defense. We already know that you've only led as large as a 200-person organization. We already know that you so badly mangled a budget that after you left, they had to bring in a forensic accountant to figure out what went wrong. And that the largest budget you ever managed was about $18 billion. You know, that is about 51,560 times lower than the Department of Defense budget of $825 billion. $16 million is 51,568 times smaller than the defense budget. Please describe to me, Mr. Hegseth, you talk about DOD passing an audit. Please describe to me a time or an organization when that you led underwent an audit, because you say you're going to hire smarter people than you to run this audit. I'm not asking you to be an accountant. I want you to be able to tell me what kind of guidance will be given to those employees, what will happen whether or not you pass that audit. Have you led an audit of any organization? Yes or no? I don't want a long answer. Yes or no? Have you led an audit of any organization of which you were in charge?
Senator, in both of the organizations I ran, we were always completely fiscally responsible.
Yes or no, did you lead an audit?
And the way
yes
my
or
leadership
no,
has
did you lead
been
an audit?
stated
Yes or no?
has been completely
What are you afraid of? You
mischaracterized.
can't answer this question. Yes or no, did you lead an audit? Do you not know this answer?
Senator, every
Yes or
part
no?
of my leadership
Yes
of these
or no?
organizations
Yes
has
or
been
no, did you lead an audit?
misrepresented
I will
from
take
top
that as
to
a no.
bottom.
What were the findings? So there were no findings because you've never led an audit. What guidance did you give the auditors? None, because you've never led an audit. Nobody expects you to be an accountant, Mr. Hegseth. What we expect is for you to understand the complexity of this Pentagon budget process that is absolutely necessary to outfit our warfighters. Look, the Secretary of Defense is required to make quick decisions every single day with high-level information that's being provided for them. A Secretary of Defense has to have breadth and depth of knowledge. Right now, I am concerned that you have neither. Mr. Hegseth, what is the highest level of international negotiations that you have engaged in, that you have led in? Because the Secretary of Defense does lead international security negotiations. There are three main ones that the Secretary of Defense leads and signs. Can you name at least one of them?
Could you repeat the question, Senator?
Sure. What is the highest level of international security agreement that you have led? And can you name some that the Secretary of Defense would lead? There's three main ones. Do you know?
I have not been involved in international security arrangements because I have not been in government other than serving in the military. So my job has been to
no. The
lead
answer is no.
men
Can
and
you
women
name
in
one of the
combat.
three main ones? that the
You're
Secretary
talking
of
about
Defense
defense
signs.
arrangements. I mean, NATO might be one that you're referring to.
Status of Forces Agreement would be one of them.
Status of Forces Agreement. I've been a part of teaching
So-
about Status of Forces Agreements.
But you don't
inside
remember to
Afghanistan.
mention it? You're not qualified, Mr. Hegseth. You're not qualified. You talk about repairing our defense industrial complex. You're not qualified to that. You could do acquisition and cross-servicing agreements, which essentially are security agreements. You can't even mention that. You've done none of those. You talked about the Indo-Pacific a little bit, and I'm glad that you mentioned it. Can you name the importance of at least one of the nations in the ASEAN, and what type of agreement we have with at least one of those nations? And how many nations are in ASEAN, by the way?
I couldn't tell you the exact
No, you
amount of
couldn't,
nations
because
in
you've
that,
not
but I
even
know we have
bothered to
allies
do-
in South Korea and Japan and in AUKUS with Australia, and trying to work
Okay.
on submarines with them.
Mr.
and data
Hegseth,
transfers
none
with
of those
them.
countries
We
are
have
in
allies
ASEAN.
across.
None of those 3 countries that you've mentioned are in ASEAN. I suggest you do a little homework before you prepare for these types of negotiations. Listen, Mr. Hegseth, we ask our troops to go into harm's way all the time. We ask them to go into harm's way. And this behind me is a copy of the Soldier's Creed, a copy that usually hangs over my desk here in the Senate, and you should be familiar with it. It's the same copy that hung over my desk at Walter Reed every single day that I woke up and fought my way back because I wanted to go back and serve next to my buddies who'd saved my life. This same copy, these words are repeated over and over and over again. And let me read out 2 things to you, 2 sentences. I will always place the mission first, and I am disciplined, physically and mentally tough, trained and proficient in my warrior task. Mr. Hegseth, our troops follow these words every single day, and they man up and they pack their rucksacks and they go to war. And they deserve a leader who can lead them, not a leader who wants to lower the standards for himself or raising the standards for other people. And by the way, our troops already meet the standards. We ask troops to man that ship, fight that fire, fly that helicopter until their very last breath. And they do that every single day. They cannot be led by someone who's not competent to do the job. How can we ask these warriors to train and perform the absolute highest standards when you are asking us to lower the standards to make you the Secretary of Defense simply because you are buddies with our president-elect? And by the way, he has filed for bankruptcy 6 times. I'm not quite sure he's the kind of CEO you want to refer to as a successful businessman. Let me make it clear. You can't seem to grasp that there is no U.S. military as we know it without the incredible women that we serve. Women who've earned their place in their units. You have not earned your place as Secretary of Defense. You say you care about keeping our armed forces strong and that you like that our armed forces are meritocracy, then let's not lower the standards for you. You, sir, are a no-go at this station.
Thank you, Senator Duckworth.
The moment Pete Hegseth sat down for this hearing, the stakes were sky high. He wasn't just being judged on his military service or his television career. He was auditioning for one of the most powerful positions in the world, the U.S. Secretary of Defense. And in that seat, you don't get the luxury of fumbling. You have to be sharp, steady, and deeply knowledgeable. But what followed was a masterclass in how not to prepare. Senator Tammy Duckworth wasted no time cutting through the fluff. She reminded Hegseth that this hearing wasn't about personality or political loyalty. It was about proving competence. As she put it, the American people deserves a Secretary of Defense who's ready to lead on day one. And then she hit him where it hurt most, his record. Duckworth pointed out that the largest organization Hegseth ever managed was just about 200 people. Compare that to the Pentagon, which oversees millions of service members and operates on a budget of nearly $800 billion. The scale isn't just bigger, it's almost unimaginable. She then reminded him that his last major budget experience ended in disaster, so bad that a forensic accountant had to come in and clean up the mess after he left. And when Duckworth pressed him on whether he had ever actually led an audit, a fundamental skill for anyone managing a budget this massive, Hegseth squirmed. He dodged. He tried to spin. But Duckworth wasn't letting go. She demanded a simple yes or no. And when he couldn't give it, the silence spoke louder than any excuse. That's where the real problem shows, because being Secretary of Defense isn't just about commanding respect in uniform. It's about mastering policy, oversight, and the kind of detailed decision-making that determines life or death for troops in the field. Duckworth then pivoted to international negotiations. She asked Hegseth to name the high-level defense agreements that every Secretary of Defense has to know cold. She gave him a chance to prove he had the depth, but again, nothing. He stumbled, vaguely gesturing toward NATO, then reached for examples that weren't even relevant. And when Duckworth pressed him on the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, a central player in the Indo-Pacific strategy, Hegseth blanked. He named countries like Japan and South Korea, which aren't even members. That wasn't just a mistake. It was a glaring sign that he hadn't done the homework. At this point, Duckworth wasn't just exposing gaps, she was showing the dangerous implications of those gaps. Because America's adversaries don't wait for a Secretary of Defense to learn on the job. They watch, they test, and every moment of weakness sends a signal. And here's where Duckworth brought in the most powerful contrast, the warrior standard. She held up the soldier's creed, the very words that service members live by, words that hung over her hospital bed when she was fighting to recover after nearly losing her life in combat. I will always place the mission first. I am disciplined, physically and mentally tough. Duckworth made it clear, our troops live by those standards every single day. They don't get to lower the bar, they don't get to cut corners. And yet here was a nominee asking to lead them while failing to meet even the most basic tests of competence. That was the gut punch, because the U.S. military is a meritocracy. From the lowest private to the highest general, it demands proof of ability. And Duckworth wasn't going to let Hegseth slide through just because of political connections or television fame. She ended with a line that cut deep. You haven't earned this. Our troops meet the highest standards every single day, and you can't ask them to fight, bleed, and sacrifice under a leader who hasn't proven he can do the job. This wasn't just a bad hearing for Pete Hegseth. It was a reality check for him, for the Senate, and for anyone who thinks the job of Secretary of Defense is about loyalty instead of leadership. Tammy Duckworth exposed, piece by piece, how unprepared he really is. But now the bigger question is for us. If this is the standard being set, what does that mean for America's national security? Can we afford a Secretary of Defense who doesn't know the basics? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Was Duckworth too tough, or was this exactly the accountability we need to see? Don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe for more breakdowns of the hearings shaping our democracy.